Are you ready to build your dream construction business in 2025? I'm going to lay out the roadmap that I use to build a $20 million a year concrete business with principles that you can apply to any business. Let's jump in. Okay, so let's get right into step number one. Generally, you probably have a good idea of the business you want to build, but I'm going to start here because it might not be as straightforward as you thought. But it usually boils down to your experience. There's a lot of people coming into the industry that maybe have little experience. That's going to change what you might do. You won't be a plumber if you don't have experience. You won't be an electrician unless you want to go apprentice somewhere. But you can kind of think, okay, what do if you're probably coming from a trade, if you're starting, depending on the business you're starting. If it's a local service business, maybe like pressure washing or something, you might not have experience. But generally the trades, concrete, masonry, plumbing, roofing, you're going to want at least some experience, or a partner with experience. If you have a partner with experience, that's great. For the most part, there are trades you can get into, maybe foam insulation, where starting the business will allow you to go through that training. But generally speaking, it's dependent on your experience. That's mainly because of course, you want to do the work right. But like with plumbing, if you don't have a license, there's no point. Or if you have a partner with a license. And like I said, there are some trades that will allow you to train in the beginning with the startup cost. Like I said, spray foam insulation is the number one I can think of, and that's also applies to when you're scaling the business. If you don't have plumbing experience, you can't train plumbers, you can't train apprentices. So it's picking the right business based on your experience is also key to the scalability. Also, if you don't have the experience in the industry, you're not going to be able to sell. You have to learn the business to sell. You have to know the business ins and outs of it, to not only speak about it confidently, but price correctly and all of those things, and minimize loss, because a lot of these trades, it's easy to make money, but it's also easy to lose money. So, you want to be able to avoid those pitfalls. Next thing it's going to boil down to is demand. It kind of depend. There's a lot of ways to gauge demand. Generally speaking, for me, I'm going to go by search volume. You can use tools like SEMrush or Moz or Ahrefs. There's a lot of tools you can, or just the Google Search Console itself, to gauge search volume. This is just an idea. You may not actually end up, using SEO as a main source of your revenue, but it's just a good idea. You can also go to some job boards and search like the yearly projects. You don't want to get into a field where, there's only 20 projects a year in your search radius, and your average, ticket is $10,000. You say, even if you win half of those, you're not really in business. And again, the number of potential clients, there's a lot of resources like Blue Book. Blue Book is the main one I would use. I think they also go by construction.com now, but just search the number of potential clients. Generally, it's going to be with GCs. If you're going into the commercial trades, homeowners, that's a whole different conversation. That would go back to search volume and some other factors. And then do competitor analysis. You can kind of go in and reverse engineer the business that you would be looking to build, whether you work in it currently. You can kind of see how they're doing it. Whether you, there's a bigger company, you can kind of reverse engineer with some tools online, how much their revenue is, where they're getting their bulk of their work, that sort of thing. And the last thing when picking your niche, your specialty, is going to come down to startup cost and capital. if you only have $20,000 to start a business or $10,000 to start a business or invest in your current business, you're not going to want to go into grading or, something that requires huge machinery. Also, you're not going to want to pay the insurance on those type of businesses. And, this is also, you generally year one, you're going to be relatively cheap no matter what business it is, just because it's a small operation, but that factors into it. And then marketing, you have to think about, your startup capital, what your marketing outlets are going to be. So the next kind of phase of starting this business is strategy. You're going to have to, just because you're in a niche, masonry, you're not going to do everything in masonry. Maybe you'll do CMU, maybe you'll do brickwork, and then you have to think about, if you're doing CMU work, what do you want to do? Maybe that will be your main source of income. Your number one, you'll do, $500,000 this year. With CMU, where are those leads coming from? That kind of goes back into your research here. You can kind of plug those numbers in. If there's 10 masonry jobs in your service area, either you need to, extend your service area, pick a different service, that sort of thing. But you can kind of judge, based on the lead source, what you want and your fulfillment capacity, what you want your revenue to be. I'm saying the same thing goes for the rest of the services. I generally don't recommend picking more than 2 or 3, just until you're, really, really established. You don't want to get overwhelmed. A lot of people say yes to everything, and that can put you in a bind. A lot of times you say, I can sub it out, and then you end up losing money, and then you're out of business. So stick to your bread and butter. Stick to your most profitable services. And particularly services that you can perform in-house. You can worry about subbing things out later. Service area, again, if your service area is 5 miles and there's only 20 projects a year, expand your service area, or, go into other markets. Maybe you have to go into residential. I recommend at least serving your, within an hour radius of yourself. We can talk about traveling later, but yeah. And that, competitors, see what the competitors are doing, what their radius is, and, feasibility and profitability, because, if you can't, make money, say, 4 hours away with paying for hotels and fuel and everything, then, that'll change your service area. Generally, the businesses I'm working at have a pretty large service area. We, service the entire Southeast at the concrete company, and even nationally sometimes as a GC. So yeah. And then last part of strategy, not necessarily the last part on this flow chart is going to be your advantage. What makes you different in the market. That usually comes down to, in construction, it's going to be 3 things. It's going to be quality, it's going to be price, or it's going to be speed. Price is your price. You can, maybe negotiate profit margins a bit, depending on your market. And speed, I'm not going to tell you how to do the work, but, I'd say quality or subsets of quality is generally going to be the area where you can set yourself apart. Special certifications, for instance, in concrete, we have a pervious pavement certification, which allows us to be more eco-friendly because it doesn't, disturb the rainwater reservoirs. I don't know exactly, but that allows us to generate a good portion of income because there's only a few people in the region that have it. Maybe you have access to materials that others don't, and craftsmanship. Again, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. Okay. Moving on to the operations of things. You're going to want to plan your resources, when you're managing the projects, what resources are you using, where are you getting them from, how are you paying for them, people, employees, subs, whatever you're using, and your equipment and tools. That again goes into things like you want to know your project budget. A lot of people go into jobs and just wing it. They hope they make money, but you want to know exactly how much you're spending, exactly who's going to be on the project, who's going to be supervising. And, generally it's going to be you in the beginning. But you want ways to track whether the project is being successful or not. And the last kind of major areas, suppliers, depending on your trade, having those suppliers lined up before you really, ramp up business so you can know exactly how much you're spending is key. Because if you think you're spending, $160 a yard on concrete and you end up spending $300, which has happened before, then, that can really, really mess up a project's budget. So those are mistakes you learn along the way. So the legal setup is, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you exactly, but generally that will go into, incorporating your business, LLC, S Corp, ownership. If you're going to, make your wife 49%, or maybe you'll make your wife 51, so you can, be a women-owned business, or maybe you have a partner that's a veteran and you want to give them 51, so it can be a veteran-owned business. Those are things to think about there. Insurance, you're generally going to want general liability. Most of the time they require $1 million, which sounds like, a lot if you don't know insurance, but I have general liability right now for like $200 a month at $1 million. Workers' comp, depending on what you're doing. If you're relying on subs heavily, you don't need workers' comp. Potentially, depending on the GC's requirements. And then auto, your company-owned vehicles, when you're starting out, you probably don't own a vehicle under the company, so you're just going to want to alter your personal insurance policy and or, transfer that ownership of the vehicle to the company. Your DBA, your whatever you call yourself, if your LLC is different. And then potential thing about any DBE, certifications you can get, veteran, minority, women, small business, whatever the case may be there. Just a few things to think about. To me, that's pretty boring stuff. Sales and business development. This is where it, really gets fun for me. So just going to go into the tools, the software that you need. So you're going to need some way to estimate, obviously. Read plans. You don't want to be printing out every single set of plans that you're going to estimate. A lot of guys do it the old school way, but some sort of estimating software. I use Stack. It's the best that I've found. It's also pretty expensive. So there are definitely cheaper options. I've used Connex, which is I think $150 a month. So you can figure out what's best for your trade. There are trade specific estimating softwares. Some of them are, not having AI, and especially for like flooring and drywall and that sort of thing. So definitely do some good research there, because that's an important factor of your business. Project management, you can use something pretty lightweight in the beginning. It doesn't need to be too crazy. Like, I don't know, whatever you want. You can even use a Excel sheet or a Google sheet. It's not really that important as long as you have a way to track your costs. Invoicing and financials, so again, tracking cost and a way to make sure that you get paid by the customer. You're gonna have to learn how to probably submit pay apps and that sort of thing. But just a way to invoice in the beginning. Your CRM, I kind of will talk about that a little down the line a little more. And your internal communications. I mean, a lot of people use Teams or Slack or WhatsApp groups or iMessage groups, whatever you want. I really prefer Teams and email. I mean, you want to record everything on email just so it's easy to search, especially with the client. But just think about what you're going to want to communicate on. Marketing. This is kind of the to me, the factor with it, of whether you will be able to grow and scale a successful business or not. So, I mean, you're going to want a website, obviously. You're going to want, a landing page for potentially running ads to it on your website. Somewhere on your website. It doesn't have to be the home page, but somewhere on the website. GMB, Google Business Profile, they're calling it now. And that really comes down to just getting reviews and citations. So just, man, everyone just ask them to review your business profile. It's really not that hard. In the beginning, just your friends and family. And citations, you can just, there's a lot of citation services out there you can use. Cold email. I'll make a whole video on cold email, but generally you're just going to be, emailing. You can do it manually. You can automate it, of course, but in the beginning, if you don't feel like doing any of that and you have, a bunch of time, you can email, GCs, project managers of GCs, or, if you are a GC, you can email potential clients all day. So, and then, meant to call this social media, but the most important one, you're going to want all three, but the most important one generally for commercial contractors is going to be LinkedIn. You want Facebook and Instagram just for SEO and general credibility, but LinkedIn for sure. And then cold calling, I would recommend this for sure in the beginning, especially if you have more time than money. Just get on your phone and call some potential clients. Just get on the phone and let them know who you are. Then you want a bit of a sales process, a sales cycle. You're going to want to go potentially, if you have time, to go in the beginning, just show up at their office, but you'll schedule meetings about projects on site visits, that sort of thing. So that's going to give you a lot of credibility and increase your chance of winning a job. When you do the estimate, you want to put together obviously a very comprehensive estimate that gives them confidence, and then you're going to want to follow up. Even if you lose the job, you can learn a lot on a lost job about pricing, about maybe scopes you missed, maybe things, ways that other contractors, things that they picked up that maybe they weren't the cheapest, but they did more for the contractor. They provided more value. So you can learn a lot, especially if you build really good relationships with estimators and project managers. They'll tell you what they're paying and why they chose the other guy or girl. Administrative tasks, a way to manage, sign, handle contracts. This is important. You also want to learn how to read a construction contract and make sure. A lot of people will slip in things, and then at the end of the job, you're like, well, I did everything that was on my estimate, but you didn't read the contract. So that's very important to learn. You don't have to be a lawyer or anything, but you have to, kind of have some. Really, it's just taking the time to actually read it. A lot of these things are like 100 pages, so you basically are learning where the things that you need to look at are, like your scope of work, in your contract value, that sort of thing, and then a CRM again to follow up and make sure those clients are happy, and then handing it over to the project management operations team. Last one in business development, which is very powerful, is events and socials, networking events, fairs. There's a lot of really good ones with Blue Book. There's all kinds of trade shows probably in your area, especially if you're anywhere near a larger city. So definitely go to those. Definitely talk to as many people as you can. Bring business cards. Don't show up without business cards in this industry. Kind of like stupid. I don't know why everyone in this industry still uses physical business cards, but they do. And last one is strategy. We can kind of leave that off because that's, mostly long-term strategy, but you do want some short-term strategy, what your objectives are with revenue that we talked about earlier, and continuous meetings if you do have a team, where you can improve, where you're not missing the mark, and then, where you're missing the mark. And then, so that's kind of the big overview. I will definitely be making a video on each of these individual topics, sometimes multiple videos on these kind of individual topics, how to optimize. I'll be making some videos on operations and bringing some guests in to talk about operations that know more than I do. So I hope this overview was helpful, and I will link out to any future videos in the description. Hope this gives you some inspiration to, help you make the jump to start the business, because it's, it's an amazing time to be in construction. There's money flowing. Is if you can do the work, there's almost infinite money you can make. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching, and have a good one.